Hi friends, and welcome to my Grounded Pond Pagoda base build. A little backstory about me and my journey with Grounded first. I first started playing Grounded back at the beginning of the early access in 2020. It was a game that was always on my radar even before it hit early access. But then upon the day of the early access release, a friend of mine, coincidentally also named Wade, was kind enough to gift it to me, and the obsession started from there. I think since then I've had probably at least 5 playthroughs of the game. Obviously, none of those fully complete because those were in early access, but various ones in single player and multiplayer, and it's just been really incredible to see the game grow in that time. I remember when the game first came out in early access, the pond was here in the game, and I do believe it was filled with water, but I think that was about the extent of it. There was certainly no Trudy 2. I don't think there was a pond pagoda on top of it or anything like that, and certainly no lab, anything like that either. So that's another thing that has been really incredible to see flourish and grow. Whenever the pond pagoda was initially added to the game, I was like, wow, this is beautiful. I would like to build a base here sometime. And so somehow amidst all of the early access, I just never quite got to it, kept procrastinating, never quite built that base. But here we are past the full release of the game now, and I needed to build a base for this playthrough, and I was like, you know what, I'm finally going to do it. We're going to build that base that I've been pushing off for so long. And honestly, in some ways, I'm glad that I waited, because now there's so many new building items and decor items and furniture that weren't there at the beginning of the early access, and some parts throughout it as well. So I think this was kind of the perfect time to get started on this. So for the bridge here that I am now starting to build toward the Pond Pagoda itself, there were a couple things that I took into account in the placement of the pallets, or not the pallets, the flooring, excuse me. One that I took into account is that branch there, that limb that you're seeing poking out of the water. I kind of tried to aim the flooring toward that edge as much as I can, just kind of brushing past it. So as you're building this, if you do it in a similar fashion that I did, if you clip through it slightly, that's totally fine. If it's a little further away, I'm sure that's fine too. But just for me, when I originally sketched this out in a creative mode, that's kind of what I ended up doing. And so I try to recreate it here, and that's where I like the placement best of this. Another kind of reference that you can use with the lily pad itself that the bridge is coming off of, there's kind of an indent. That's the best way that I can describe it, in kind of a similar angle to that branch. So if you kind of place it near there, the start of the bridge, that might help you a little bit. I want to apologize because on my monitor, I've definitely noticed amidst playing games with some of my buddies, especially my Grounded buddies, that I think my monitors are just very bright. I have the brightness set very high on them, and so I definitely realized after filming this first part of the base build that I was like, oh, this is probably going to be a bit dark for people to see, because I know not everybody's monitors or TVs are quite as bright as mine were. So I apologize about this first part. I swear here soon I will actually pull out a torch for my character so we can see what's being done here a little better. but thank goodness for the blueprints that are a bit glowy. Without those, we'd probably just be looking at a black screen right now. You'll notice for the sake of this video, I cut out all the parts where I went to farm grass planks and weed stems and all of that good stuff. And let me tell you, if I had included all of that in this video, it would have been many hours long. Just the collection of all the materials, it took quite some time. And I had thought about cutting down all the grass planks and the weed stems and stuff beforehand in advance, but I knew that the despawn time was either 1 day or 3 days. Either way, I was like, I'm definitely going to end up losing some materials if I try to cut them down all in advance. So that's why I kind of did it intermittently here and there, just as I needed the stuff. You can see now that I finally decided to bring out that torch. So thankfully now we can see a little better what's going on. This was an exciting moment when I finally got to the end of the bridge, because that was quite the feat. And then we start building up toward the pagoda itself. If you do decide to end up building a base like this yourself, you absolutely could build the staircase kind of just like straight up toward the base itself. At least I believe so. I know the physics with this game can get a little wonky sometimes. I had to do some finagling with it myself throughout this build. But for me personally, I just kind of like the look of the stairs going back and forth as opposed to going straight up. When they did go straight up, when I tested that out, I thought it just kind of looked a little like overbearing, but that's just me and my preference personally. I want to apologize because what you're seeing here with the base build, I did end up changing a little bit afterward with the bridge and the stairs leading up. As opposed to just one pallet and having a second staircase coming off of that, I did end up making 2 floors wide and then having the second staircase coming off of that second flooring. You'll see that a bit later in the build here. And reason for that was because when I ended up making some pebblet ramps to meet up with it, it just felt a little off. So that's why I ended up extending those grass floorings there. So here we are, finally getting to the exterior of the base. This is definitely what I wanted to start with, just kind of building out some walls. You'll notice as I'm building this, I tried to leave the holes of the pagoda as empty as possible. And the reason for that is I'm just like a huge window fanatic. I love just the airiness and the open spaces. But if you want to like fill in all of the holes of the pagoda, that's totally up to you. I will warn you, I have not raid tested this, so if your base got raided by, say, mosquitoes or anything like that, could they fly in the holes? I really do not know. So if you do have raids enabled, definitely keep that in mind, that might be something that needs to be tested out. But this is how I wanted to build the base personally, and I just tried to go with the flow of the base, just kind of filling it in where you can't like walk through the gaps, making that initial door entrance very intentional. The good thing about the location of this pond pagoda base build is that with it being right beside the pond, so no surprise there are a heck ton of those, what are they called, husky weeds right beside the pond. And so there was not a shortage of those for the exterior of the base build. And as for the grass planks, those weren't really far away either, kind of just beyond the branches of the oak tree. For the outside of the base, the reason that I decided to go with the weed stems is because I wanted to try to stick to materials and decor items that, if you were playing in a survival mode like I am, I wanted to stick to things that you as a player would have access to at the point of getting to the pond. But if you are later game and want to use some of those other materials, totally go for it. If I decide to make some upgrades to this base later on in my playthrough, I might end up doing that as well. So you've probably noticed at this point that on most of the sides of the exterior base, I've just been using these half or triangle walls to fill in some of the gaps. And that's to keep it having that open, airy window feeling. But I haven't been too crazy about the look of the field station smack dab in the middle of the base. So you'll notice in this build, personally, I tried to cover it up a good bit. As for the exterior, I chose to go with some full higher walls just on those sides. And then we'll get to the inside covering up soon. And now that the exterior is to my liking, we get to the inside, the fun part. So I'm going to start with this curved grass wall here. And if you do want to cover it up, the field station, in the way that I did, you want to start with putting it right in front of the door. I tried in creative mode when I was originally sketching this all out in putting the curved walls around the edges first and kind of working my way around, but I kept getting, the message that the location was obstructed. So I was like, okay, let's just start in the middle and kind of work our way out from there. And another thing, I originally wanted kind of all curved walls around it, but when I did, that was causing some issues too, so that's why I chose to go with just the straight walls in between the two curved ones. So once you have that all placed out, you can actually delete the blueprint for the first curved wall right in the middle that you originally placed. That was just kind of to serve the purpose of being able to place these in these specific spots and kind of as symmetrical as possible. And now that we have the field station completely enclosed, here we start with the rest of the base build. I'm taking some of those full grass walls again and just coming off one of those curved wall corners and sending it out that way. I forgot I actually removed a couple of the blueprints. The one on the left you'll see here in a second, I decided to kind of have as a, I don't know, how do you call it, like a look through from the other side. The other side I intended to have as a kitchen for the base build here. And I thought it might just be kind of cool to have an opening where you could overlook the seating area or the dining room or whatever you wanted to have in this main initial foyer type area. You'll notice here that with that opening that's leading to this other side of the base floor of the pagoda, I did put another full grass wall on top, but I later ended up changing that as well. I felt like the door or the opening there just felt like a little too enclosed, so I ended up changing that out for a half wall instead. Sorry friends, it appears that we're going to be working in darkness for just a little bit longer until I can go and make another torch. That's the lovely part about survival, isn't it? If you're making this in creative mode, things are going to be a lot easier for you. Okay, I know throughout this space build that I haven't shown me running back and forth too much, but I kind of just decided to include this part here where I was running across the pond just because it's so beautiful. You'll notice if you decide to build this space yourself or something similar, you'll just get some extraordinary views as the sun's coming up and as the sun's going down in the game, and just as the light is trickling across the water, it's super beautiful. I know I mentioned earlier about you totally getting to choose what material you want to use for the exterior walls of your base, and that totally applies to the inside too. I personally chose to go with grass planks because I needed so many of them and they're very easy to obtain. And also additionally, I wanted to use a different material than I used for the exterior. We have officially made it to the second floor, my friends. You thought there was a lot of grass planks used on the bottom floor? Well, just you wait for this. Granted, we don't need to make as tall walls that we did on the bottom, but oh goodness, were there a bunch used for this flooring. So I made a bit of a boo-boo with the blueprints and the initial building of this flooring that I noticed later. Then you'll see me go back and fix some of this here in a bit. But you'll notice with the corners of those floors, towards the front of the interior base that they're overhanging the walls. And I realized that later after placing the grass planks. I was like, yeah, no, there's a bit of a ledge there and I'm not liking that too much. So I had to go back, delete some of the floors, and then replace them with like some triangle flooring just so there wasn't the overhang, and so that it lined up better with the floors, or excuse me, with the walls on the first floor. For me personally, I thought it was just kind of like a weird gap between the staircase and those full grass floors. I do end up enclosing that staircase with some half grass walls later on anyway, but even still, I just felt like it was like an odd gap. Whew. And with that, we have officially finished the flooring and half walls for the second floor. I do end up coming back to that second floor here in a bit, not only to decorate obviously, but I decided to put a bit of a balcony off of that second floor, so we'll come to that back here in a bit. I'm now returning to the front of the base. I put these curved grass floorings at the front door just to kind of give it a welcome mat feel. I originally tried with half grass floors, but I kind of like the look of the curved ones just to break up the shapes a little bit, make it not feel so boxy. And leading up to the front door, I decided to go with pebblet ramps for a couple of reasons. One, the grass stairs just were a little too big for these shallow steps of the pagoda, but also since the pagoda itself was stone, I thought it was kind of nice to have some pebblet ramps leading up to it and kind of just like sticking with the elements in the medium there. Another joy of building a big base like this in survival mode, you are going to get hungry and thirsty very often. So you'll notice my character right now. She could use some water. Here you can see what I was talking about earlier, or trying to explain at least, where I did extend out that grass flooring after the second grass staircase, just because I felt like it lined up with that pebblet stair a little better there. I initially placed that half grass flooring, but it was just kind of poking out weirdly from the grass stairs. So I ended up replacing that with a triangle grass floor instead and felt like that lined up a bit better. And now we start building onto the balcony. Again, this is another thing, if you choose to build a base like this, you totally don't have to do a balcony at all. But I thought it was just nice to kind of have a nice sitting area, to get like a good view of the oak tree. It's just like such a beautiful location for this space. Trying to get a shape for this balcony that was to my liking was a bit of a struggle. I tried to get it to kind of line up with the edges of the pagoda as much as possible. I'm now making a pillar to support the balcony, not like structurally support, because obviously, I was able to make it here without the pillar, but just from more of like a realistic perspective, I was like, okay, let's like put this underneath so it doesn't look like it's just floating there. But you totally don't have to do that again if you decide to make a base like this. But that was just another personal preference of mine. Kind of same thing with the staircases in front of the base, where I chose to put like a weed stem scaffolding underneath them just to make it look like a little more like filled in. Ooh, and after many hours later of material collecting and base building and planning, here we are at the final version of my pawn base build. I say final version, but here I am already planning on how I can improve it and make it even bigger later on in this playthrough. Here's the kitchen area, which I was probably most proud of. I thought this especially exuded the whole cozy vibes, having that little cooking station tucked away in that little nook there. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. Thanks so much for taking some time to watch. It was the first type of base build video that I've ever made, and I was really nervous in case that wasn't obvious. So thanks for bearing with me. I really hope that you enjoyed it. And if you did enjoy the video, please let me know in the comments what type of base build you'd like to see me do in the future. Any particular locations in the game. I'd really like another challenge. This was really fun. If you like this video, giving it a thumbs up and subscribing to my channel is so appreciated.